Welcome to another episode of the Bridging Divides podcast, where we bring you the advice, tools, and resources to help you build the bridge to success. I'm super excited to bring you our guest today, Christina Fabritiis. She is a good friend of mine. We've known each other for couple years now, right? She's a pediatric sleep specialist, and so I'm super excited to bring her today to talk to us about why sleep is important, the adverse effects of not getting enough sleep, and what we can do to better that. So, Christina, thank you so much for coming and welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's I've been really excited. You've been floating around in my mind for someone to come on specifically because of what you do. You know, I have 50,000 kids, and so obviously, getting kids to sleep is something that has been like my life for the past 9 years. So thank you for coming.
You tired?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, maybe a little bit. No, well, we have 3-month-old.
Yeah.
So that's been.
Exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, people usually when I tell them number 6, they kind of switch from congratulations to condolences. But I when we were at the hospital, I was in the elevator and this lady was in. I was holding the car seat. She's like, "Oh, congratulations." She's like, "Which one is this your first?" I was like, "No, 6." She goes, "Hmm." And that was it. And then she like got off the elevator. I was like,
Awkward.
yeah, it was fantastic. It was beautiful.
That's
But
funny.
no, we're super excited to have you. Kind of want you to brag a little bit about yourself. So tell us kind of what you've been through, and kind of the fancy stuff that kind of make you uniquely qualified to do what you do.
Well, I'll just share a little bit about my story
Yeah.
and how, I got into this. Um, so back in 2011, we had my daughter, and, for the first 7 months of her life, well, first of all, my husband and I struggled with infertility for 3.5 years.
Mm,
And it was rough. I mean, I did every treatment. I did double, triple doses of Clomid. Like, we were convinced we were going to have triplets or quadruplets or something. And finally, we moved from Utah to New York, and we were building a house, and I said, I'm just tired.
yeah.
I'm tired of trying to do this for so long, and I need a break. We're
Yeah.
building a house, let's just take a break. So we took a break and I started researching and I found this program called the Metabolism Miracle. Did that program, boom, within 6 weeks I was pregnant
Oh,
naturally.
geez, that's crazy.
So for anybody who's struggling with infertility, it's a book you could get on Amazon by Diane Kress. It's a little plug there.
We'll make sure we
It's
put a link.
amazing.
We'll put a link in the
Yeah.
description.
Changed my life. And so we had our daughter in 2000, June of 11. And for, when you have your first child, you're like, oh, and especially for those of us who struggled with infertility, not
Yeah.
sure that it's actually going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she was our princess, right?
Right.
Like 100 times over again, just because we didn't think we were going to be able to have
What it
kids.
took to get there.
Yes, right. It was
Yeah.
such an emotional roller coaster. And so for the first 7 months of her life, it felt like she cried. And it was heartbreaking because it was like, I wanted nothing more than to just have a child. But here we are, exhausted. So my husband worked for a big box retail chain. He was an HR manager. And, he traveled. Plus, he was going to school to get his master's degree. So he was on the road a lot. He traveled from store to store.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was driving a lot. And my daughter, she would wake up probably 4, 5, 6 times a night
Oh gosh.
wanting to be nursed
Right.
back to sleep. And it was like, I just can't do. So I would sit in the rocking chair and make him stand in front of me because out of fear that I was going to drop her
Oh gosh.
because I kept falling asleep. And so he would stand in front of me to help me because I just didn't want to drop her. I was so scared. And so it just got to the point where it became life threatening. He would fall asleep at the wheel. So literally became life threatening. He would call me and say, I need you to call me in 10 or 15 minutes. I just I have to pull off on the side of the road.
Yeah.
I just need to catch a nap. Like, I'm falling asleep.
Oh my gosh.
And so at that point, it was like, okay, we have to do something. We can't keep going this route. I don't want her to cry it out. My heart just breaks. Like, I cannot do that. And so I
Yeah.
just started researching and trying to find different options out there. There's so many different, it's overwhelming, right? And so finally it was like, okay, we can do this. We can do this. And so I took more of a gentle approach and found a program that was able to help me from, it's Dana Obelman Sleep Sense. And I did that method and I started helping other families with that over the years. And finally in 2019, my husband was like, why don't you get paid and go do this? You're so passionate about this.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you go do it? Like, you're helping people all the time. You might as well
Yeah.
make a business, make a career out of it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I went and got certified and became a pediatric sleep specialist. And so we do use a more gentle approach versus the cry it out method. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be crying, but I do help people navigate through the different levels of cries. And we use two different options. We use a stay in the room option or a leave and check option. And we work with children all the way through 12 years of age. I have another sleep consultant, Katie Cuncho, who she had her own business and she folded that and came under my business. She's in Florida and she had a 3-year-old boy and then, surprise, was pregnant with twins. And so she's on a little bit of a break right now. But so there's 2 of us and I'd love to expand my team and have 4 or 5 more sleep consultants that work for me. So any of you listening might be interested in something like that.
There you go.
We would love to have a conversation and see where that goes. But yeah, so.
And now, so real quick, is that something that you have to be in person for? Like you have to be to meet physically to consult?
So, to be honest with you, over all of the years that I've been doing this, that is something that certain sleep specialists will offer. However, I decided real quick early on, I've helped people in the UK.
Oh gosh.
I help people all over. My business is virtual. I can help anyone anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't feel, because we would charge thousands and thousands of dollars to go in person.
Right.
I don't need to do that, which is how I'm able to keep my fees
Great.
lower. So everything we do is over Zoom. It's over phone calls, emails. We have lots of tools that we use, and that's where my success comes from, is essentially holding their hand through the three-week process of working together.
Fantastic, because we have viewers that are all over the place, and so so there you go. So if you need help with that, now do you work with adults?
I do work with adults. I prefer children because so if you think about a toddler and how they're a little set in their ways, adults are a lot more set in their ways. And I find with adults, it can tend to become more of an identity, that it is part of who they are, versus they actually really want sleep. So it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah, go
I
into
might
that.
get some
That's intriguing
backlash here, but the truth of it is that some people just want to complain about they just don't sleep and they don't really want to do the work to get there. So I don't really love working with adults because it's kind of hard to rule that out. If I talk to you and we are having a conversation and I feel like, oh, this person really wants to get it narrowed down on what's going on, then I would take that person on. But I prefer working with children.
That makes sense. I mean, really, with anybody that you're working with, you want to make sure that they actually are going to take the steps.
Yes.
You know, I think that's a really good piece of advice in general.
Yeah.
Wanting to change and wanting to want to change are 2 different things.
Yeah.
If you want to change, then it all becomes about complaining.
Right.
Now, when you truly want to change, nothing is going to stop you from changing, achieving whatever goal it is that you want, whatever relationship, or going out and getting to know people. When you really, really want it, you'll find a way.
That's right. Yeah. And so I prefer working with, so we work with newborns all the way through. So we don't sleep train newborns. We help new parents of newborns help them establish healthy sleep habits
Right, because you're just starting.
from the bat, right, from the get-go, so that they don't need to sleep train.
Fantastic.
And then, as they get a little older, like 4 months is a starting point that we would start sleep training because their circadian rhythm is changing. And that's when we would look at starting to sleep train. Obviously, a lot of people know about that 4 month sleep regression is the worst. And so that is the only true science-backed real sleep regression.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so there have been lots and lots of studies done about this. There's so many different regressions that people talk about throughout a child's life. But the studies and the scientists have shown that the only one that they can detect in brain activity is the 4 month sleep regression, because they're working out that they're changing their sleep patterns as a baby. And so there are other regressions that may happen as they get older. But that happens when they're about to hit a milestone. And so if baby's going to start walking, you may notice a pattern in their sleep shifting. So my advice would be that if that happens for more than 2 weeks, it's when you would call me for help, because if it's just a milestone, it will fix itself in 2 weeks.
No, and I think that's really important to keep in mind too. With anything that your kids might be going through, whatever, there's the whole, oh, it's just a phase. But I think that sometimes that can be detrimental to taking care of your kid's health. Oh, it's just a phase that they're going through. It's like, well, I mean, a phase is one thing, if it lasts for however long.
Right.
Goes longer than that and it stops becoming a phase and starts becoming a problem.
Right.
I think that's very important to address.
And it is important to seek professional help, because if you're not sure, I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine today. Her daughter was stuttering, and she's 5. And, from my experience, my daughter stuttered when she was a baby, and the doctor said, if it goes more than 8 weeks, it's something we need to look at.
I see.
But in 6 weeks, it corrected itself. She was fine. But really what it was is that, as babies and children, their brains are picking up so much that their mouth has a hard time getting out what they're trying to say.
I've seen
so they're like, information, overload, and they're trying to get out to you what they're trying to say, that they just can't keep up with it.
Yep.
So, but we wouldn't have known that had we not gone to the doctor and asked for help.
No, I love that. Oh, absolutely. And I think that really, in general, which we have talked about several times, is such an important part of growing, where or any sort of progression, is that you can do it on your own, and there's the anxiety and fear and stress that comes from doing it alone. But just by virtue of asking a question, kind of letting your guard down and asking somebody for help, even if they're not doing everything for you, just by virtue of going, oh, no, you're fine. It's like, oh, okay, good. As opposed to being scared the entire time. Now you've had the confirmation that, no, we're good. We can move forward.
And you bring up a good point to touch on, is that so many parents come to me in our free discovery call to see if we're a good fit for each other. And a lot of times it's the dad that will say, why can't I just Google all this and find this out on my own? Well, you can. And then 3 years later, you'll come back to me because all the things that you've tried haven't worked. However, in 3 weeks, we could be knocking this out and getting it done.
Absolutely.
And you'll have your life back for the next 3 years. And then I think that as moms, because I was in this boat myself, that once you have a baby, it's like, now you've not just become a mom. You're a nurse, you're a doctor, you're a firefighter, you're a cook, you're a maid, you're a this, you're a that. And it's like, and I can't get my baby to sleep through the night.
I know.
I should be able to do this. And so that mom guilt sets in. And it's like, and that's why when I do a discovery call, I require mostly that the dad is also on the call, because the thing is, a lot of times the dads and the moms are not really communicating about how each other are feeling about this situation. And so there's sometimes a lot of tears on our calls because the dad doesn't realize how the mom really is feeling. And it's like, she needs this. She needs the help. But you want to just try and take your time and figure it out, where she is dying. She might be a stay-at-home mom, but she is putting her keys in the fridge. She might have left the stove on. Like, there's so many things that are going wrong that you probably don't even know about that are happening because she doesn't want to tell you because
Yeah.
she's afraid of looking like a failure in your eyes. And
Mm-hmm.
here she is asking for help, begging, crying out for help. So let's just get them the help that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because it's so you're not just helping children by virtue of getting the kids to sleep.
Right.
You are then allowing the parents also to
Yes.
get the sleep that they need.
And I'll give you an example of a perfect example of that. I
Yeah.
had a mom come to me who this was their fifth kid, and
Amateurs.
he was
Just
3,
kidding.
right? He was 3, and she came to me, and there were tears, and she was like, her and her husband are sitting on this Zoom call with me, and she's like, I, I just don't understand. Like, we've had 4 other children. We've
Uh-huh.
never had this problem before.
Mm.
You'd think we'd know what we were doing by now.
So there's that
But
guilt
this,
that's
but she said, this boy has affected our life so much so that my husband doesn't want to be around us anymore. He leaves the minute that the boy's home. He
mm,
leaves the house. My other kids want nothing to do with us. They all come home and scatter to their bedrooms.
yeah,
We have no family dynamic. He bites, he hits, he screams. He's
man,
doing a disaster. He's building disaster in our home, and we don't have a family dynamic anymore.
man,
And
that's
it's
hard.
just heartbreaking because we used to be such a tight-knit family.
Mm-hmm.
And so within in 3 weeks, I changed the whole dynamic of their family, and she was in tears on our closing call because she's like, I had no idea that it
Wow.
would only take us 3 weeks to do what you just did. And she said, I had a gentleman who I graduated high school with who came to me, and he's like, my little boy will not sleep, and I'm going to hire you, but I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to be real with you. At the end of our 3 weeks working together, he said, I'd have paid you $1,000,000 to do what you did had I known.
Man.
So it's not just working with the kid. I'm working with the parents, really. And that's the other piece of it is, are the parents really, because they're the ones that I'm just going to coach you. I'm
Yeah.
going to give you the tools, the information on how to make this work, but
But you have to
you have to
implement it.
do the work.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You can't go completely rogue and just do what you want to do and then come back to me and say, well,
Didn't work.
it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but did you do everything that I told you to do?
Yeah.
Right. So
Talk to us about the adverse effects of not getting sleep.
yeah.
Because I think that for a lot of us, we might not realize what, either for us parents that are out there, that we don't realize that this is happening to us. It's like, oh, I'm fine with this much sleep. I can handle it. But all these different things are happening. Or in our kids, what is it that, those adverse effects that happen to them? Can you go into that?
For sure. Yeah. So another story that will kind of touch on that is I had a mom come to me when I first started out. She was a friend of mine, and she called me over the phone in tears and said, I hear what you're doing. I'm actually literally on the way to go meet with a psychiatrist because for the last 3.5 years, I haven't slept. She said, I have a little boy who has Down syndrome, and he does not sleep, which means I do not sleep. And
Right.
she has 3 other older kids as well.
Yeah.
So there was no sleep happening, and she said, I am at my wit's end. I am over exhausted.
Yeah.
And she said, and I literally am having a mental breakdown now. And I need help, and I'm just coming to you as a last ditch effort because
Yeah.
I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Well, and for many of you that are listening, maybe you don't understand or know that children with Down syndrome don't sleep well. Period.
Just in general.
They don't sleep well in general. But they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And doctors also are not professionals when it comes to sleep, and we can touch on that in a minute. But so we worked together for 3 weeks, and within 3 days, the little boy's preschool teacher, daycare teacher, whatever, came to the mom and said, "What are you doing differently with your little boy?" And she said, "What do you mean?" "Nothing. I'm just working with a sleep specialist." "But why?" And she said, "Because all of a sudden he's picking up everything that I teach him, like
Wow.
boom, 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 like he's a little recorder, like he's got it
That's
all
awesome.
in 3 days. And we weren't even like, we're just getting going in 3 days, right? So it is typical that you'll see results within the first 1 to 3 days, but it is a bit of a roller coaster working together.
So
This,
not being able to learn as quickly, to
yeah,
absorb
hitting your
information.
milestones. So a lot of times people will come to me, and that's part of my questionnaire is, are they hitting all their milestones? A lot of times they're not. So
Interesting.
retention, but think about you as an adult when you don't get sleep. You have,
Oh,
you're
don't even get me
short with people,
started.
right?
Oh yeah.
Tell me, how do you feel?
No, yeah, for me, I mean, so I have visited this topic very closely because depression, anxiety, that's something I have those chronic issues, and I just had a conversation with a psychologist today. Like that's an active part of my life, and all of the things that I'm going through are made 10 times worse when I don't get the sleep that I need. And so it has to be like a religious part of what I do is getting enough sleep, because otherwise depression kicks in more. There's a cloud on my mind. So even if I could normally logically rationalize my way out of whatever funk that it is that I'm in,
Right.
if I have that cloud of exhaustion, then I spiral. And my wife, I'm, oh my gosh, like I can see conversations that we've had
Exactly.
where one thought leads to another, to another, to another in a negative way. And so I just go
Yeah.
all in the course of this conversation. And so it's like I have to make sure that I get that sleep. Otherwise, it just,
But could you imagine that's how you feel on an infant or a child who cannot communicate with you, that that's how they're feeling?
well, it's even worse
It,
because the just being able to express it is therapeutic.
right.
So if
But
you
they
can't,
can't put a label on it, right? They have no idea. You're
so
their
they
advocate.
bite, they lash out, they,
Thank you. Yes.
right.
They do all the things
Mm,
that they know how to do. They cry, they scream, they pull their hair out, they pull your hair out, right?
yeah.
That's their way of expressing. And I often
Gosh
tell
dang.
people this is why it's not a no cry solution, because babies cry because it's a form of communication to
Right.
let you know that
Mm-hmm.
something's wrong. But as far as some of the adverse effects of not sleeping, I mean, you named it, like anxiety, depression. Um, your stomach is like a second brain. So not only do we look at sleep, we look at the stomach. What are you feeding yourself? What kinds of
Sometimes I
things are
think
you
my
eating?
stomach is my
What?
first brain. That's what I think with first, and then
My
I.
stomach is my first brain. We get hangry, right? You think about it, you're rational, and a lot of times we're like, okay, he's hangry. Let's just get him some food, and then we can talk
Yeah,
about
yeah,
our
yeah.
plans,
Mm-hmm.
right? But in children, they just don't know how to express it,
Yeah.
so they just act out, and it's like, and then in adults, if not having not enough sleep, because we just don't take it seriously. People just don't take
Absolutely.
sleep seriously.
I
But
gotta work. I gotta do this. I gotta do
yeah,
whatever.
I can run on fumes. Okay, did you know that if you sleep less than 6 hours, you're more likely to be prone to a heart attack?
Oh, hold on. Say that one again.
If, as an adult, you don't sleep more than 6 hours, you're more prone to having a heart attack.
Really?
Uh huh.
Wow.
So
Is that
there,
just because like during sleep there's so much that
yeah,
goes on
like
to
recovery.
recharge, to recover.
I mean, we are meant to sleep for a reason,
Mm.
right? You can't live with no sleep. We have got to sleep. Your body recuperates during sleep. Your brain is processing all the things that you learn, all the things that you're taking in. It just has to have processing time, like
Well,
a
it's
computer, right?
that's
Like
interesting because if you don't have that, you can overheat,
you're gonna
right?
short
Your
circuit.
short circuit.
Yeah,
Yeah, hey, there you
and then
go.
your keys end up in the fridge, or your, I don't know, dinner ends up in the
Well,
trash, or the I don't.
but then or even worse, when you have kids, some of those moments where you're like, "Oh, left my keys in the fridge." It's like, what if you leave your kid in the car? What if
Right,
you don't you fall asleep and you'll hear them crying when they need you,
right.
or they get hurt or whatever. Leaving your keys in the fridge is comical.
Yes.
When it comes to something that you forget about your kids, that's where it can get
You
really
forgot to pick
dangerous.
up your kid.
Yeah, and
And
then
the list
the
goes
list goes
on.
on.
It
Yeah,
really
of
does.
course,
But
of course.
at the end of the day, we need our sleep, and more people are taking it seriously, but more and more people need to take it seriously, because the world is so busy these days that people don't prioritize their sleep, when really that's the first thing we need to be, because,
Really.
and they say there are studies that have been done that people who employers have dabbled in allowing their employees to
Yeah.
take a nap midday in the afternoon, and they're actually more productive than
Awesome.
the people who don't take a nap.
Absolutely. I can totally see that.
Right?
Absolutely.
We're rested, and so we have more brain capacity to get things accomplished.
Even a short 20, 30-minute
Yeah.
nap to just reset,
Recharge, right?
all of the information overload to just, put it on pause for a second, let it process, and then do it again, open up or wake up and do it again. Oh, yeah.
So every employer should have a sleep room.
There you go.
Just kidding.
Hey,
be great.
I'm with you. You're saying that. I'm like, yeah, it's a fantastic idea. No, that's great. So, how much sleep do we need, depending on age, body
I
type?
have a whole chart that we can post for people, but
we'll put
kids,
a link to that
yes,
then in the description.
But as an adult, you need about 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I do feel that women need more sleep than men. But yeah, I think well, not my thing.
It's because they have to put up with us. Yeah. Is really what it is.
And all the kids, right? and all the household things, and then if they work, and it's like it's exhausting.
Women are awesome.
Yeah. Women are awesome.
Yeah. No, that's yeah. There you go. No, that's great. So I did have a couple other questions here. What truth is there to the adage "early to bed, early to rise"? Makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Right? That's the whole adage. What is there to that? Is that true, or is it? Will you get just as much benefit sleeping in the middle of the day than you will?
Yeah.
At a certain time.
A lot of people talk about, if I put my kid to bed later, they'll sleep later. But we have a lot of problems with early morning wake ups, right? It is better to go to sleep earlier because there are certain times that of the night, like 4 a.m., that your brain is actually doing specific things that isn't going to happen at 12.
Interesting.
So it's important that we, a lot of people who actually are night owls, they consider themselves night owls, they're overweight. So if you're having trouble losing weight, this is something to check into is, are you getting enough sleep? Because a lot of times the one thing you need to do is just change your sleep habits and get enough sleep.
So weight gain's another adverse effect.
That's a big deal.
Interesting.
And so, here's an example. So for my kids, up until this year, they've gone to their 9 and 12 this year. They started their bedtime at 6:30 and lights out by 7, and they're up by 6:30. That's like 12 hours, 11 and a half, 12 hours of sleep.
Dang.
So my daughter is in 7th grade and my son is in 4th grade.
Yeah.
And they sleep. But they're also both straight A kids. I was not a straight A kid, and I did not sleep. I went to bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock
I was all
every
over
night.
the place. Oh, yeah.
All the way. I didn't know what I didn't. I had no idea. My parents didn't know. My mom still scoffs at me that I put my kids to bed so early. She's like, they need to go to bed later. Okay. But listen, my kids are both top of their class. Everybody loves them. Like they have great little personalities. They are straight A's. Like they're healthy.
I love that.
And that's another thing is that you're more likely and susceptible to getting sick and having a lower immune system if you don't get the sleep that you need.
But again, it makes total sense because if you're not giving your body that rest that it needs, it can't recharge.
Right.
To be able to do what the normal biological functions that it needs to do.
Right. Give your body the time and the chance to recuperate because sleep is what does that for you.
Yeah. No, I love that.
So if you're doing that on a regular basis, it's less likely that you get sick.
Right. Yeah. As opposed to it's the preventative versus reactive.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the best things that you can do when you can't sleep?
As an adult?
Sure. Adult, kids. What would either way?
Yeah. Okay. overall for everybody, adults and children included, right? We sleep best when it's as dark as possible, pitch black. And that is one of the things that when anybody comes to me, I always ask them, I give them a chart and I say, where is your room on this scale? And I give them a visual to say number 1 through number 10. At what number are you at? And they'll oftentimes say maybe between a 6 to 8. And I'll say, okay, before we start working together, let's get you to a 10. So we can do simple things like at Home Depot or Lowe's or even Amazon. They have like those paper, like card, it's like construction paper that you can put in the window that completely blacks out the room.
That's what I do. We put up paper.
Yeah, they're like
put up,
$6 to $7.
We put up this insulation foam.
Yeah,
that we got from Home Depot. Yeah, just cut it out to the window.
Right, make it pitch black in the room, and so there's that. That's number 1. Number 2 is that we sleep best when it's cold. So think cave-like, right?
Interesting.
So we want it to be between 68 and 72 degrees.
Awesome.
Something else that you can do is put the Epsom salt in the bath and take a bath with that.
Okay.
Start dimming the lights around, if your kids are going to go to sleep around 6:30, 7 o'clock, I would say start dimming the lights around 4:30, 5 o'clock in your house.
Interesting.
Close up the blinds, start dimming the lights, because what we want to do is start bringing in that natural melatonin.
Okay.
And that is actually something else that if somebody were to come to me to say, I need help, I would say, well, what are you doing now? And if they said, I give melatonin, I would say, okay, well, I need you to come off the melatonin first.
See that not that I haven't used it, but it
doesn't keep you asleep.
It worries me almost.
Yeah.
If like I don't want my kids to become dependent on that.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're like, So, couple hours before bedtime, dim the lights, I would assume cut screens.
Yes, so no screens, preferably 2 hours before
2 hours
sleeping.
before bed, okay.
You could do an hour, but if you kind of have to play for it, because play with it and see to that individual if you find that they're still kind of doing jumping jacks or backflips in bed. Okay, maybe we need to cut it to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then the next night, okay, we're gonna do 2 hours tonight and see what it's. I personally say 2 hours.
Okay, so you kind of have you kind of play with it, give or take a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, what else going?
For sure. What else? For adults, I recommend doing a brain dump. For my older kids, I'll recommend reading.
Okay.
So adults can read too, but for adults or kids can read, they can also do a brain dump if their mind is going. And like if you come to me and you're a parent laying with your kid and they have a lot to say at bedtime, the idea is to get you out of the room quickly and not to lay with the kid at bed. And a lot of parents will say, well, I like that time. We build the other time in for that during the day.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But really, we want your routine with them to be 5 or 10 minutes of brushing teeth, going potty, doing all the things, and get you out of the room.
Got it.
And have time with your spouse. That time is built in for you and your spouse to get your life back, because you guys need that too.
Absolutely. With the example that you said before of the division that can cause with this issue, I mean, being able to have that time, that gives you time to court each other, which relationships are a whole other thing, which, if you guys want to hear more about relationships and how to have successful ones, let us know in the comments, and then we'll make sure we get someone to interview about that. But it is so important to have that time that you're spending together, whether you're playing a game, you're watching a show, you're whatever, just close to each other with no distractions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had people come to me who, even I had my own business coach at once came to me, and he had a 2.5-year-old boy who didn't sleep, and he was on top of him in the middle of the night, and he was like, I'm just like, he's suffocating me in the nighttime. I cannot sleep. We have to go to a whole new bed in the guest room to sleep, because I got to get him out of my wife's bed because she can't sleep.
It's this whole thing.
It's like, it's just ridiculous. And so when I told him about the earlier bedtime, he was like, this is my business coach. There's no way in the world my kids will ever go to sleep that early. And I said, okay, give me 3 weeks of your time and then we'll see. And he
Interesting.
said, I'm going to try your way. I'm going to do whatever you tell me. I'm going to do it all. Okay. And so by the end of our time together, he said, 7 o'clock is like biblical in our house. Like
Really?
we will not do a 7 p.m. bedtime ever again because it's like night and day in our family.
How do you make that shift from kids
It's,
going to bed at 9, 10 to
yeah.
making them go to bed
You hire
at
me
7
and
o'clock?
I help you make that shift. No, but it's a process, you know. It's to be honest with you, kids don't really know. They don't have that concept, especially when we're working with babies and toddlers. They have no idea what time it is. You know, I have tools and resources, and I customize a plan, and we work it out, and it takes time, but it does work, and it's great when it does.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, just kind of wrapping up with our time here, we like to end the show on a segment we call the Positivity Prize Fighter segment. Everybody that we talk to, we ask them about this. So the whole concept behind it is positivity to me is like the most important thing. Life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you deal with it, right?
Yeah.
That having that perspective. Now, in my mind, positivity is not just having rose-colored glasses on all the time, saying everything's fine, even though the world's exploding around you, right? So in a prize fight, you don't lose by getting knocked down. You lose by not getting back up, right? That's positivity, that resilience to say, yes, it's still worth fighting for.
Yeah.
I'm going to get up after life punches me in the face.
That's right.
So what's a time in your life that you'd like to share with us where life has punched you in the face and knocked you down, and how did you get back up, and what did you learn?
Yeah, I would say, um, you know, just diving into business and, you know, realizing that I wanted to make more of an impact for other parents out there, you know, going through what I went through with my daughter and realizing that I didn't want any other parents to ever feel like the way that I felt, defeated as a mom, like a failure, because nobody should feel that way. You're not. It's just that you don't have the information that you need. And so I wanted to make it my mission. I felt really led by God to put that out there and say, you don't have to do this alone. You just, and you're not a bad mom. You just don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so to have the courage to start my own business and go for it and do it. And I had no idea, you know, what it was going to do for me. And it was scary, but I went for it. And because of that, I'm able to change people's lives. And sure, you know, you have the haters out there, you have people who challenge you, but it's like, I'm changing people's lives literally.
Mm-hmm.
Through God. Like God is helping me do that, right? It's all him.
Yeah.
But
You're the hands.
I am his hand. We talked earlier.
Yeah.
We're the hands and the feet. We're called to be his hands and feet on this earth and to make a change, and that's what we're doing. And so yeah, I mean, there are times in life and in business where you get knocked down, but it's just about getting up and go, okay, this didn't work. So what can I do differently? Or like we talked about earlier, that it takes 100 no's to get to a yes, right? Or however many it takes, but those no's are still a part of the process to get to a yes, or I'm in, or, you know, like just moving forward. You had to go through all that to get to where you are today.
Absolutely. I like saying that the fastest way forward is frequent failure, right? If you're just focusing on those failures and going, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, then yeah, you're going to want to quit. But if you can just put yourself in the moment when you've achieved success, and then you look back and you go, oh yeah, all those failures, I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Right.
Because you know now that it was leading up to what it is that you have.
Right.
If you can have that mindset before and just know that that is the process that it takes to get there, oh my gosh, you'll keep going and you will get there. Promise you will get there. No, absolutely. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And the world is so busy right now, and there's just so much going on that we have to take the time back to pause and reflect and realize our brains go a mile a minute. Something else that I wanted to share real quick is that when you asked me about the effects of not sleeping, that I really wanted to draw attention to this because people don't realize that this is happening. Doctors don't know sleep. I touched on that.
Oh, yes, you mentioned that.
But what's even worse is that sleep deprivation has very similar symptoms, almost identical to ADHD symptoms and
Interesting.
ADD. So we have literally been able to change a person's ADD diagnosis just by changing their sleep habits and their food habits. And so there are people being misdiagnosed when really it's sleep debt. So and I guarantee you, if somebody comes to you and says they have ADD, ADHD, even autism, those kids don't sleep. Those people don't sleep well. Yeah. So if we can get their sleep worked out, their symptoms will change.
And it's like, even if they do have ADD or autism, having the right sleep
and food
will lessen the symptoms.
And that's why I say we look at food and we look at sleep.
Amazing.
They're intertwined. So when I work with a client, we look at both of those things.
Well, it makes sense. It's like you're giving the proper fuel and you're giving the proper rest.
Yes.
Interesting.
So I wanted to make sure that we talked about
No, yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up because, I mean, that's something that I've got 5 boys and a little girl, and they're nuts, and we love their personalities. We love them. And there are certain things that we can say, okay, I know that you're tired. You need to either take a nap or early bedtime, or we need to get you some food.
And that's it. So between 4 to 6 p.m. is that witching hour, where they come home from school, they're wired, and you're like, what? They're like in your face. They're like, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do, yeah.
And that's when you go, okay, you got to go to bed early tonight because you're exhausted. And that's when they're that wired mindset. That's their way of telling you. I'm not tired. I'm not tired.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. Okay. You just look at them and go, okay. And then you look at your wife and go, start dinner now. Let's go. Because it might be 6 o'clock, but they just showed you they're ready.
They're ready.
So by 6:30, lights out.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Christina, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Super
great.
awesome. And guys, if you are going through your day and you have this cloud, this fog, take a nap. Maybe take a nap during the day or just get an early bedtime. Please put into practice what she's talking about. And if you're going through these things with your kids or somebody that you know please give Christina a call. We'll make sure that we put your contact information in the description. Anywhere that we can get a hold of you, then we'll make sure that we have that so you guys can contact her. As always, we love you. Trying a new sign-off today. Bridges are built from 2 sides. No one succeeds alone.
Love it.
Love you guys.
Thank you.